Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I'm your host. Alright, so this will be kind of an uneven episode. There's not much to talk about in terms of news, but I do want to use this time to catch up on some of the stuff I said I was going to catch up on last week because I didn't really read anything then. And that means stuff like the Hellfire Gala and the recently released DC Pride one-shot anthology issue. And also the season premiere of Loki, the new Disney Plus MCU show. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's just head right into it. First off, let's start off with the Hellfire Gala, which I think comprises at least of Marauders, Hellions, XForce, and Excalibur, plus a couple of mentions in things like Children of the Atom. I think that's most of the issues that have been out, but I have read most of them. And I have to say that they're all really good except for Excalibur. I think the biggest standout issues have to be Hellions and XForce because I mentioned I really love those series to begin with. And these issues are pretty much exemplary of what those series really do well. If Hellions, it's the humor, it's the character dynamics, it's the really oddball, screwball, madcap kind of like bleak humor that it goes for that really works for these characters. But what the Hellfire Gala tie-in actually does differently is that it actually imbues them with a little bit more camaraderie, which is weird. It's not something you've seen not even at the height of XForce when they went on that big road trip together. So I think that's really nice. I'm not quite sure like how far it earns that, but it does lead to some great character set pieces when they're actually just kind of hanging out. It's something that I hope the series continues to kind of enrich in and kind of entrench itself in going forward. I think that would add to a nice layer that the series can kind of grow into in future issues and arcs, especially because we've got the return of Sinister Secrets that implies there might be a big shake of the Hellions, and if they end up becoming more like a bonded team, then hey, that'd be a great way to have them weather that. And with XForce, well, it's still a really fun series when you really get down to the brass tacks of how insane and just downright despicable most of their actions are, especially Beast, and it still has that really mad scientist super spy edge to it. And this issue kind of brings all that to the forefront when we get more of the ramifications, consequences of their really bad misadventures, especially of the plant zombies. And again, that just makes me really excited for where this is going because it ends on such a disastrous note. And what I want to note about the Hellfire Gala is that each issue kind of goes back and forward in terms of time. You might have like the first, I think, Marauders issue span the entire night in bits and pieces, and then these other issues are like doing little clumps of time here and there, which I think is meant to make it easier for a future kind of omnibus to like put all together, and it makes for a really kind of interesting reading experience, kind of reminiscent of House of X and Powers of X, where that would kind of interlock and interchange its time periods as well. But it's about a dinner party, so it's a lot less serious and dramatic about it, but it's still a lot of fun to read in that way. I will say the weakest has to be Excalibur, and I know that Children of the Atom probably might have been the weakest because it's not even a real tie-in, but with Excalibur, it still has all those same hallmarks of just being a bunch of ideas. I think the biggest strength that Excalibur brings to the table is that it's actually taking the load off of one of the little plot threads the initial Marauders issue kind of seeds out. The Marauders issue is really important because it opens up a lot of little set pieces that get carried and paid off in other tie-ins. And the Excalibur issue actually, does one of the best jobs at it. It's still just all over the place, and it's not something that is enjoyable to read. I'm not invested in that series anymore, so seeing more of that, even if it's in an event that I am currently more than enough enjoying, it does nothing for me. But Children of the Atom, like I said, it only gets like a cursory mention and acknowledgement that it's going on. I think this is a big uptick over the third issue. I think this arc only has one issue left. It appears to be going on further than that, so I think it's got an extension to hopefully kind of build its foundation. It would be a shame to see this end after only 5 issues because there is potential there, and at least 3 of these 4 issues so far have shown that potential. The third issue was a hodgepodge of nonsense. It didn't feel like he was predicting the characters or the plot or the themes at all, while this issue does. And it does so not elegantly, but believably. I think that there's a lot going on here in terms of getting into Marvel Lad's POV and seeing like his own reactions. I think he's probably the most dynamic of the POV characters we've gotten so far. We've gotten Cyclops last and Cherub and the Gambit analog character, and they've all been like really high key, like teen soapy. Meanwhile, Marvel lads got a little bit more going on. It's a little more grounded, and there is some teen drama in there, but it's not coming from such a like high strung, high energy kind of place. It's a little more downtrodden, a little more kind of depressive, and I thought that was really refreshing. It adds a deeper layer than, oh, it's a love quadrangle, you know? And I thought that was really fun and interesting to kind of read. There's still a lot of work to be done here, but you know what? I'm rooting for this underdog of a book. I'm hoping that Nita Ayla is able to shape something out of this that is worthwhile in the end. And I think that's about it. I know that there is also XMen, which is enjoyable. There's the infamous Kevin Feige cameo that appeared in there. But it was just a very perfunctory issue. Nothing really big happened in it other than explaining who the new X-Men are going to be in the X-Men ongoing, and also setting up a really great link toward planet-sized X-Men. So fingers crossed that goes off well. But moving ahead to what I also read, I want to talk about DC Pride. This year's Pride Month anthology that DC came out with, and it was good. I didn't enjoy it as much as Festival of Heroes, but I will say that the stories in DC Pride were more consistent. While Festival of Heroes was a little bit more all over the place in terms of quality, it had higher highs than I think DC Pride did. All of DC Pride's, or at least 90% DC Pride stories, are at the very least entertaining on some level. The ones that I thought stood out were the Montoya question story. I thought that was really fun. It did have a little bit of an anticlimactic payoff, but I think overall getting into Renee Montoya's POV and seeing her thoughts, it was really entertaining just to get that kind of like caustic, cynical, and kind of self-aware POV and narration that made a very great use of the like 8 pages that story gets. And I thought that was really entertaining and really kind of fun, action-packed kind of sequence that had a lot of brevity to it, good amount of levity, and kind of like sarcastic humor to it. And in what seems to be like kind of a big surprising showing, we've got like 2 different Estrano based short stories. The first one, written by Steve Orlando, has him teaming up with John Constantine, or at least having a story with John Constantine, where he's basically written as DC's Doctor Strange, which is weird, and I don't like that at all. But it does show something more reminiscent of his 80s getup with like the giant purple, mauve, fuchsia cape and cloak. And I thought that was pretty fun. It's a little awkward. I think he looks really great in his like really casual boho suit. I think that looks really great. And then we also get the JLQ short, which was going to be our introduction to them if they had won or gone further along in the DC round robin tournament, which they were a part of. And it's not great. I think that short is very messy. It's a very messy short. It's all over the place. What we learn about JLQ is that it was going to be basically every LGBTQ character that DC has on one team, which is a ridiculous idea. It's not a good idea, because you get like the splash page and there's like 20 characters on there and none of them really get any page time. It's a cluttered, chaotic, unorganized mess, honestly. I think if you cut that down to like 3 or 4 characters, you got something interesting. I think there's 3 or 4 characters that really would work on a team book, especially on this kind of level. And the other ones maybe have cameos in the book, but having them on the main team and seeing like splash like that, it's disorienting. What I did like about JLQ is that, again, apparently it's headed by Estrano. Estrano's idea, he got all these people gathered together and recruited them. And I think like that's a perfect use of Estrano. I think that's something that he would do. And he shows up in an even more blatantly Doctor Strange-esque costume, but this one's a little bit more designed. It's got more kind of flair and functionality to it, and I enjoy it a lot more than the one we saw in the Orlando story at the beginning. So I love Estrano. I think he's going through a renaissance. I would love to see more Estrano, especially this version. Less Doctor Strange, more kind of Barfly. I think he would be great in that kind of role, that kind of sarcastic, sardonic role. I don't think that Orlando's writing for him was bad, just his use of him in that one story. I think that in the small little cameo bits he got in the Midnighter and Midnighter and Apollo stories, it was used really well. So, you know what? Fingers crossed. And yeah, overall for DC Pride, I would give it one thumb up, one thumb middle, number score 7 out of 10. And overall for Hellfire Gala so far, one thumb up, one thumb middle, overall score like 8 out of 10. Anyway, let's move on to what I watched this week, which is Loki, Season 1, Episode 1. And honestly, it isn't bad, but it's only by the metric that the other 2 MCU shows on Disney Plus already so far were immensely worse. Like WandaVision, unwatchable, just terrible garbage, and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was just bomb the barrel, useless, pointless writing. Or like 80% of it. Loki, on the other hand, it's a very basic, perfunctory season premiere. Like, it's just there to set up the status quo, set up the situation, and do nothing else other than that. It's just there to hit all the beats you need, catch the audience up, catch the characters up. Here's what we need to do. Here's the status quo. Here's the setting. Here's the plot. And it does so in almost rigidly checklist-like fashion. But it's okay. Like, it's fine. It's not interesting all that much, but the setup it works to build is interesting. So I'm hoping that the next couple episodes we get a lot more out of that. I've heard rumors that it's going to be very episodic, that each episode is going to be like a self-contained little story, and like I welcome that because this feels like an episode that would be on a regular TV show. It doesn't seem like it's a prestige Disney Plus MCU show. It feels like it's the pilot for so now be on ABC or ABC Family, you know? Like a standard, basic cable network show. Which, you know, fine. If it wants to have that bar to it, then let it have that bar and it reaches that bar. WandaVision tried to be like this deep, existential, philosophical, mental health thing, and it failed the fuck out of that. Falcon was a soldier tried to say things about politics and global society and all that kind of stuff, and it also failed at that at various levels. Loki seems to want to be like this Quantum Leap Doctor Who show. And, you know, we don't know if it's going to reach that yet, but the setup for it was decent enough. So fingers crossed. There's nothing really here to enjoy all that much because it's so standard. It's just there to set up the situation. So you don't really get much characterization out of Loki other than like the novelty of seeing his Avengers oneself react to stuff from like Endgame, which is probably the best acted and written moment when he sees like him turning good would lead to his death, and he's like, you know what, fuck it, and he starts to go AWOL. And I think that was really great. Tom Hiddleston does a great job reacting to that, feeling emotional at that, like getting the brunt of that over his head, and you feel how much it's pressuring on him. That was wonderful. The rest of the episode, like, there's nothing. The characters are all blunt. They're all just basic characters there to set each scene up that don't do anything. Even Owen Wilson doesn't really get much to do. Yes, he bounces off Loki and there's a dynamic trying to be set up there, but in the end he's only there just to exposit like both the context of the plot of the story of the show and also say character stuff that the audience would say. Like, it's meant to be the audience mouthpiece. So it's not really a lot going on there. Hopefully the next couple episodes will be okay. Overall, 2 thumbs middle. It was decent enough. And I think I'd give it a number score of 6 out of 10. Anyway, that's it for this week. I'm going to give a shout out to Cover This First Show at DOTEMCE. Please check them out. They're amazing. I also want to give a shout out to Comic Code Authority, my podcast with all of our Korean reviews, and our friend AJ. We're doing a special episode. We're going to record it this weekend. Hopefully get it out sometime next week. So be on the lookout for that. And also, link everything below. Have a great weekend. See you again next time.